All right, you're welcome back, and it is talk time. Yes, indeed, we have, well, today actually we'll be wrapping up our series on the power sector. On Monday, we started with a review of the privatization process. Tuesday, we dealt with power generation.
And Wednesday was the day we reviewed the process of electricity transmission, and Thursday we looked at distribution, and today, which is the last, we'll look at the alternative energy sources and review the whole series.
Now, Nigeria's inability to achieve stable power supply over the years is a strong indicator that her reliance on gas for power needs to change. The federal government over time has been called on to broaden the country's energy mix to ensure stable power supply. Okay, and of course the need to shift towards renewable sources of energy and all of that. But we're joined from our Abuja studio by former chairman, Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, Sam Amadi. Good morning and thanks for joining us. Well, it is common knowledge that Nigeria is blessed with enough resources to serve as alternative sources of energy, in the quest for not only providing enough power for Nigeria, but indeed sustainable power. Why do you think we really have not been able to tap into these other sources of energy, that makes Nigeria, with a population of 170 million people, still struggling over 5,000 megawatts?
Well, I think you should remember that globally, the resort to renewable energy was not really, didn't start off as early as we started electricity generation. We started power here in Lagos State from 1896. So it was just maybe a few decades ago that the world decided to look at renewable as a serious source of electricity generation. And of course, given our own collapsed electricity sector, I mean, you wouldn't expect that government would consider renewable very attractive for many reasons. One, we're abundant in gas, and so the natural logic would be that we will be a gas-based power country, just like the US is coal largely, and Brazil, elsewhere, they rely on hydro. So every country tried to optimize the low-hanging fruit, and for us it was gas. But unfortunately, we didn't plan with the socio-economic context of gas to power, namely vandalization, unrest, and of course, the weak infrastructure linking east to west in terms of gas supply. But having said that, the other reason is pricing, the commerciality. We had a collapsed sector where public ownership resulted in lack of commerciality, so there were no investment opportunities in the power sector up until 2012 and now that the new government is in power. So essentially, given that lack of commercial incentive, you wouldn't expect private electricity producers to come up with renewable. And thirdly, we still have a consuming public that don't pay their rates, and essentially renewables will be slightly more expensive than conventional power because of, for example, solar is going to be in small tranches, it's going to be expensive to develop, but of course new technologies are driving down the cost of renewable energy. So for a mixture of structure, commerciality, and of course technology, we're not able to sign up to renewable energy as and when they developed industrial countries. And lastly, I would say, those countries have achieved capacity. They're now looking for efficiency and clean energy. You see, we are suffering from scarcity, and so our thinking didn't shift quick to clean energy. We are more concerned with how do we grow capacity, and of course, we're not yet successful in doing the more basic elementary thing, which is building what we call load-based power that you can use to run industries, run commercial activities, and of course homes. So we are just now moving, we are doing the difficult work of thinking about capacity and thinking about efficiency and thinking about cleanness. The countries of the world moved, they already had capacity, and then they now start thinking about efficiency and then thinking about clean energy. So that's why we are not up to date on the global quest for renewable energy.
All right, Sam, you've given us a picture there, but let us also know, as a regulatory agency, even though you were the former chairman, but let us know what role and the interface or relationship between the regulatory agency and some of these companies, the Gencos, the Discos, and even TCN, that is largely owned by a government, run by Manitoba, as the case may be. Let us know the kind of relationship you have with them that makes them, compel them to effectiveness or lack of it, as the case may be.
Sure. Well, thank you very much. First and foremost, we are a regulator, and our job is primarily, we have a threefold responsibility. First, we have the right to determine entry and exit into the market. So, for example, if we didn't license an operator, they wouldn't come to the market. And licensing carries a responsibility for them to meet some technical, commercial, and social obligations. For example, you would mean that your machineries, your turbines, if you're a generator, or your lines and cables and transformers, if you're a distributor, are up to date as standard. That's number one. Number two, we want to make sure that you have the financial capacity to sustain production. And number three, we want to make sure you have the technical and managerial capability to run an efficient and continuous electricity service. So that's number one. The other thing we do is also, they're not going to come to this market if they're not assured of a return on investment. So the primary work of a regulator is economic. Basically, try to create a pathway for those operators to see how they will recover the huge investment. By the way, most investment in power sector will be sunk cost. That means that capital investment that you're going to repair and recover over a 20-year duration. And so the first thing we did as a regulator is to create certainty and stability in economic management. So they know exactly that they make investment in 20 years, they're going to have their returns fully, plus some reasonable return on investment. And also, that means also that you have to look at the consumer side of it. We try to also ensure that they're going to render service, what they call the quality service regulation. What kind of service would they regulate, would they offer? Would they provide complaint mechanism to manage issues? Would they provide customer feedback to ensure that customers know how services are improving or deteriorating? So essentially, what we did and achieved was to create a bankable market. That's why today, before us, there were no investment in this sector, but today, there are investment. Now, the second problem now is, how do we ensure that these operators who have come are able to meet the expected quality of service? Metering, 24/7 light, of course, that depends on how much power they can get from the grid. That depends on gas supply. So essentially, what we've done in the last couple of years is to create a market from no market. Before now, there was zero investment. Today, we're talking about billions of dollars, and there are new expected investment coming from China, coming from the Asian countries, and coming from America and Europe. So today, the electricity market in Nigeria is well structured. The problem is that the input gas and, of course, the capacity to wheel power is still insufficient. And I will expect that as we deal with the crisis in the Niger Delta, as the gas operators begin to fall back on next framework to make more investment in gas supply chain, they will see a ramping up of power supply. So I do believe that our work as a regulator has been well done, which is set the stage and then allow the operators come to the market, have investment, produce power and recover. But unfortunately, gas supply and other socio-economic factors have not allowed us to come up to 5 to 600 megawatts that this market could have got by now.
All right, it's interesting you talk about the pivotal role that NERC, the regulatory body, plays in protecting the interest of investors, or even attracting investors, and of course protecting, very importantly, the interest of the consumer. We will just hold on for us, Mr. Sam Amadi. Let's throw more light on this, especially as we discuss renewable energy, for Nigerians to get a clearer understanding. And then we will come back to the real issue here, how NERC protects the interest of the consumer, especially with the tariff crisis that we have on our hands. Now, renewable energy is energy from a natural source that cannot be depleted. Sources such as wind, solar, biomass, and hydro. The most commonly used source of renewable energy in the country is hydropower. Wind and solar energy have only been deployed in small amounts.
Now, solar energy in Nigeria is majorly used in urban areas for street lighting. And the federal government, in its Vision 2020 program, listed a number of policies that would help diversify the country's energy sources from predominantly gas and hydro to solar and other renewable sources.
Now, but that plan was a flop as the objectives for the first medium-term implementation plan 2000 to 2013 of the program didn't take off. Let me very quickly bring in Sam Amadi here, a former, of course, boss at the NERC. So why did that particular program fail?
Well, clearly, the program was designed to fail because it was merely a platitude. You know, it's just an aspiration. You say we want to have X amount of power by 2020, but there was no framework until 2010, and lately, more or less 2012, when the federal government created the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading Company. We didn't have any serious framework to actualize the vision of renewable energy. Actually, just about last year or thereabout, the federal government finalized the renewable energy and energy efficiency policy. So there wasn't even a clearly articulated policy framework. So most of Nigerian documents are aspirational. We want to do X, Y, Z, but the underlying institutional framework to deliver on them are not available. So until NEC was created in 2005, and then NEC board was dissolved illegally and then reconstituted in 2010, you couldn't have a regulatory framework strong enough to incentivize investment in renewable. But when we came on board, we started that. And before I left, we have licensed several renewable, some biomass, we've licensed solar, we've licensed wind farms, and of course we have hydros running. So today now, you can talk about significant and meaningful efforts to attract investment in renewable because one, you have the license framework, you have the commercial framework, the feed-in tariff has been done by NEC. We did the feed-in tariff regulation, which now provides incentive and bankability for small solution providers. So somebody can do a 10 megawatts, 5 megawatts renewable energy plant somewhere in Lagos or in the north, and then have a guaranteed contract that allows you certain recovery. These are the things that we're missing. So we didn't have strong policy, we didn't have a regulatory framework, and of course we didn't even have strong financial incentive for investors. Even up to today, we need to do a lot more on coupling some financial incentives to allow investment in renewable. I give an example of Kakara, the Manitoba. When government wanted to move into clean energy, they had to set up the Manitoba, the Ontario Power Board, whose job was simply to provide a markup. So if the normal price of electricity is X dollar, then that board will guarantee X plus 2 in order to provide incentive for new investment in renewable. So essentially, it is now that we can talk seriously about moving to renewable energy because we have now a very good enough regulatory framework. We have policy framework to support it. All right,
Sam, we'll certainly come back to you. Now, Nigeria has 485 million megawatts per day of solar energy in natural units and an average of 6.2 hours of daily sunshine. The use of solar electricity systems aid the capture of solar energy using photovoltaic cells, which convert the sunlight into electricity.
This resource has been found to have the capability of providing more power than all the fossil fuels we currently hold if properly harnessed. The Energy Commission of Nigeria, ECN, was established in 1988 to articulate energy policy for the Federation. Now, together with other institutions and initiatives such as the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC, and Renewable Energy Program, REP, the ECN creates roadmaps for the actualization of energy sufficiency for Nigeria.
Now, in 2014, the federal government signed a memorandum of understanding with 3 companies, Solius NGPC, People's Home Association, and Solar Force Nigeria Limited, for providing solar power across the country. What has become of these agreements is what we're going to ask Sam Amadi to let us know. The memorandum of understanding that was signed for this project, can you give us insight into what is the state of things now as far as the MOU is concerned?
Well, we should understand what MOUs are. They're essentially a commitment by government to say, look, they think this is a good project, they think they're going to provide the support and all that. They don't still translate to practical things. For example, after signing an MOU, the would-be project manager will need to get a license from NEC, and they will need to, if it's going to go to the grid, he has to negotiate with the bulk trader for power purchase agreement. And that will only happen if the bulk trader is satisfied that the off-taker that, for example, you have the finance to execute project. That's number one. And now the financing companies will require that there's a bankable off-taker, somebody who can guarantee that they're going to take this power and pay the price. So essentially, the signing of MOU is the beginning of a journey to now get to build, commission that power plant. So essentially, none of those MOUs are sending power to the grid. As of today, there is no Nigerian renewable energy in the grid. All our power come from either the thermal plants, the gas-based power plants, and hydro. But we do have some license and PPA signed now. So hopefully in a couple of, let's say, a year, 18 months, depending on the quantity of renewable energy coming to the grid, we can see some small, patches of renewable energy coming to the grid. What has happened, and what is even better, is use them off-grid. So we now see a possibility that some discos can buy renewable power for some restricted areas, housing estates and all that. We can see some far-off communities in the north, for example, being reticulated not to the grid, off-grid, to provide, using solar, using the wind and other forms of natural energy to power. Now, those MOUs have not translated to power, but it's a journey. It's not the beginning of a journey that requires both licensing, power purchase agreement, regulatory framework, and then actual, construction, engineering contracts that those promoters will now sign with various actors. All
right, Sam Amadi, still stay with us. In 2005, the Lagos State government launched a rural solar electrification project at Onishowo village in the Amuwo-Dofin local government area, a village that was cut off from the national grid. Now, in the past 2 decades, states like Zamfara, Bauchi, Benue, Bayelsa and Rivers have also partnered with the World Bank and the Energy Commission of Nigeria to carry out similar projects in rural communities across the country. Okay, back to you now, Sam Amadi. The rural communities, they seem to be left out completely when it comes to projections as to, how Nigeria can actually have adequate power. Like you said, the main challenge is not even, sustainable power and all of that. It's even getting power in the first place, especially in a situation where even in the cities, there's not enough. How much more the rural communities? Talk to us about this agreement or inauguration of by former President Jonathan of the SE for All before he left office. Tell us about that. What exactly was that about, and how was Nigeria going to benefit from it if it's still ongoing?
Sorry, I didn't get the agreement again.
The SE for All, which was inaugurated by former President Goodluck Jonathan before he left government. What was that about? Sure. You want to shed light on that, and how will it improve Nigeria's energy efficiency?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a member of the what they call the Global Electricity Initiative, the UN, which manages the Sustainable Energy for All. And what Nigeria did as a member of that body, of the UN, is to sign off to Sustainable Energy for All. But essentially, these are international norms that need to be now localized, and localizing them will be within the framework of your policy and regulatory framework. First and foremost, rural electrification in Nigeria is very low. We have low connectivity. Many communities are not on the grid, and even when we are struggling for lack of stable power, those communities don't even have any power. And what NEC has done is that we have a regulation called embedded electricity regulation, and also what we call independent electricity distribution network regulation. These two, and the other one is called independent transmission electricity network regulation. What they do is they enable you to create island operations. So you can go to a community, provide power for them through a modular power plant, whether it's solar, whether it's gas, or whether it's hydro, or whether it's wind farm, so that you don't have to go to the grid. You don't have to, you bypass the transmission problem. So I think the success, the future of those communities is to use solar, use renewable energy to give them small solutions. And NEC has provided a regulatory framework for that. What's left now is for local governments, state governments to activate and work with the private sector, the Chamber of Commerce in their communities, to develop small solutions in a commercial way, and then maybe if it's more than 5 megawatts, come to NEC for licensing. I give one example. In Edo State, there's an export zone called Osisioma, where they have their own generation. They got a license from us, got a distribution license from us. So what they do now is that they are going to provide power and serve that community. This is what should be done. Again, to be effective in rural electrification, we now need to scrap the former approach of just putting what they call constituency project. You just put transformer, National Assembly members award transformer to their community, transformer to nowhere, no light, no network, no cabling. Let's follow the example like Chile or elsewhere, where the Rural Electrification Agency, we ask for auction from small providers, NGOs, to develop 3 megawatts power plant for a community in Sokoto using small dam. Now, that is the way you use renewables. So it doesn't have to be centralized, it has to be decentralized. You provide physical policy support to private developers who work together with NGOs and who work with communities and other governments and state governments to provide modular power supply to that community. Ring-fenced, commercially viable. It could be through a small user fee, subsidies, and whatever. That's the best way to connect the communities to the grid. And again, we are witnessing massive technology change in the global electricity market, meaning that very soon the big electricity providers will not be there. We're going to use network system, pro-consumers. People will now generate their own power and sell to their neighbors. So why don't we start to innovate and use small producers, small solutions to reach out to our people rather than trying to connect them to a grid that is totally incapable. We
all right.
Radio network, we're not well
all right.
looked up. So
yes, Sam Amadi, we'll come back to you on this. Now we have the Minister of Power and Housing talking about this issue we're dwelling on right now. Let's play that report and listen to the Minister of Works, Housing, Babatunde Fashola, on this as we get along.
The result of those cracks were the power dropped back to about 2,000 megawatt. We are now slowly trying through other sources to improve. We're about 3,000, but still fluctuating because the most reliable source of immediate power today for the country is gas. We will have stable electricity when Nigerians stop vandalizing pipelines. We will have stable electricity when Nigerian contractors awarded contracts to build distribution assets, build them properly. We will have stable electricity when communities who host these assets also understand that they must sacrifice so that the nation can benefit.
All right, you heard the minister there, Isim. From what he has said, I wouldn't say there's no hope, but Sam, let me bring you in here. When the minister says that we'll only have stable light, or there'll be light only when pipeline vandalism ends and when host communities, you listen to him there, and all of these things seem to be on a continuous basis. So what's the hope of Nigerians when it comes to having light in their homes?
Well, I think the minister was speaking, it's a device of speech to strike the heart of people. I mean, he didn't literally mean that nothing will be done until these vandals or invaders change their lifestyle. But essentially, he's trying to drive on a critical point that we can't think about getting light as an engineering feat. It's not just engineering. It's what we call in policy adaptive challenge. That means not just technical. You look at the socio-economic circumstances. So if we didn't have vandalization of pipeline, we would be comfortable today with about 5,500 megawatts of power or up to 6,000, depending on how the capacity of the generators are. So that gives us a cushion, gives us some quality, some degree of what the minister also called incremental power. He has a triangular framework, a trigonometry that says first is incremental, you move to incremental, stable, and uninterrupted. So
okay, Sam Amadi, let me come in very quickly before we let you go. The issue of tariff, you were quoted as saying that nobody can reverse the new electricity tariff. Of course, there was a 45% hike on tariff. The courts have stopped that. What's your take on that right now? Because, I mean, we hear that the minister himself has said without this tariff, not much success may be achieved in the area of providing power for Nigerians.
Yeah, when I was in office, I tried to make this point very well. Building on my competence as an administrative lawyer trained in America, where we have the highest level of regulatory framework. A regulator is the one that makes the tariff, not even the minister, not the government, not the court. The court has the right to invalidate any action of any agency that's illegal. But what I was trying to say, and I mean it and I stand to today, we should not judicialize our everyday life. The court cannot just intervene. All over the world, you defer to the regulator. Then there are internal process that you should go through before you now go to the court. And if you go to the court will also try to respect the regulator, except the regulator is illegal, or irregular, unreasonable, and irrational. Apart from that, the U.S. Supreme Court said it clear in Chevron, the case of Chevron, that a court must defer to a regulator because the court is not an expert in rate fixing.
All right, Sam Amadi
is the expert, and until he acts stupidly, the court will respect that. But
the
court has a right to rule, and the people who are aggrieved should go to appeal or obey the court. So
Dr. Sam Amadi, former chairman, Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission, thank you for talking to us on TVC Breakfast.
Thank you so much.